Welcome back to Just Hear Me Out. Today we have our first guest ever, and it is my husband, Scott.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Welcome, Scott. Oh,
So, we wanted to get some man perspective on some of the dating stuff we've been complaining about. So, we thought
hmm
we'd have you on to give us the explanations from a man's side.
Yeah, there's been a lot of complaining. I'm kidding. Uh, it's okay.
So, Scott did listen to our episode of your list, your dating
mm,
list.
okay.
What did you think of that, Scott?
Demetra's list specifically,
Yeah.
I think that's a
Yeah.
good benchmark. Uh, it's good to have a list of, these are deal breakers. This is, my top three. This is my nice to have. Those types of things. So I think that's important to have for sure.
Yeah. Do you also feel that, having this list kind of keeps you on course to make you not fall off when dating? Because it's easy to ignore people's red flags if you don't have that list in front of you, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I think a big part where people get stuck, myself included, obviously before I met Barbara, is I think attraction can help. There's sometimes you can fall for your own trap, if you will. So if there's someone that is just overly attractive, or there's something about them that you really you're attracted to, sometimes that list goes by the wayside, and it's kind of like, well, let's just give it a shot and see what happens.
Absolutely. I agree.
Oh, and something that you two both have in common is that you are divorced,
Yes.
and that's something I haven't had. This is my first marriage.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one thing we were talking about before was how is it different dating after like first the second time versus the first time?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's I think it's similar. I don't know that my list per se has changed. I think I scrutinize a little bit more. After I had my first marriage, and that's not an experience I regret. It's not something I would say, oh, I hated it and it was horrible and I would never do it again. It makes you who you are, right? So it makes you as the person that you become. So I don't know that I would be as good of a husband to Barbara had I not had that experience. Not that I'm a great husband, but
Well,
I'm just saying.
Yes,
I
he
mean,
is.
they do say like typically divorced men make better husbands.
Yeah. All right. I
I
don't
mean,
care.
that's what I've heard before.
Okay.
I don't know how true it is, but I think it kind of makes sense what you just said. You went through something, you kind of know the do's, the don'ts, and what's going to make you a better person, right?
Yeah,
So,
and of course you obviously you mature a little bit. In every relationship you learn a little bit more about yourself, and you learn a
hmm
little bit more about what's important, and as you say, that your list you put together. But the challenge is that as you get older, the kind of fish in the sea, if you will, are less and less and less because people get married, they get older, they get more set in their ways, and that it just becomes your available options kind of shrink a little bit. So sometimes you have to trim your list a little bit more. And that's not at all to say that I trim my list for Barbara, because Barbara is in a different galaxy altogether. Um, so but yeah, I there are things, in terms of my list, maturity is probably one of the top. Um, a critical thinker, someone that's intelligent, and intelligence can have many different facets, but I think, book smart is important, but I think also street smart, common sense is paramount. I'm very, very fortunate that Barbara is exceptional at both of those. So she has a lot of book smart. She's very intelligent. She even, well, there's never been a time you know more than I do, but uh,
Hmm.
there are, she has a lot of common sense, and that's not common, as they say. Um,
It's really painful to be in the world and have a lot of common sense because you just see everybody not.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yes.
Oh, something I wanted to bring up that I thought was really interesting is Demetra and I were really agreeing on. Did you hear the part in the episode, babe, about like that we kind of would prefer someone to not have kids
Yes. Yeah.
because of that dynamic? But something that's interesting, Demetra, I don't think I've ever told you this, that
Mm-hmm.
Scott actually really liked because he wanted kids,
Mm-hmm.
that he liked dating people that had kids, and that was like really. Would you say so?
You know,
Oh.
Or it was not a deterrent at all for him?
well, I should clarify. You know, I did have actually I had a long relationship before I met Barbara with somebody. It was almost about a year, and she had a boy, and he was I think 9, 10. And when we broke up, I missed him more than I missed her. So as it turns out, you know, and then that's a specific, you know, everybody's going to be a little bit different. But I think, Demetra, to your point on that topic is that you want to be sure what you want to know what you're getting into. So obviously, children are going to be the priority for the parent, and that's as it should be. But you know, you have to understand that, you know, it's unless you get married, unless you know something happens down the road, you're really not going to be that kid's parent. And that's something that you have to kind of get used to. And I did find myself sort of competing for her time. And there were occasions where she would kind of exclude me from things, and that, you know, I really was bothered by that. So you have to trim your ambitions and understand, like I said, what you're getting into, what are the stakes. And of course, you know, nowadays they say, well, don't introduce your kids to your significant other for 3 months, 6 months, and whatever the benchmark is these days. But
Well, you know what's interesting with that is, a lot of my male friends, none of them, not one has ever said that they do not want to date someone with children. All of them are okay with it. I think
hmm
men are more okay to dating women with kids,
hmm
but I find it opposite. Women have a harder time or wanting to date or be with men that have children. I mean, I don't know what other reasons are for other women. I just know what my experiences are. And like I said, the fact probably is because I don't have kids myself. So
hmm
I want to be number one in someone's life,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
and
And I
that's
think men are little, they're not as sensitive like women. They could take a back seat to like, okay, like you said, the woman you dated that had a 9-year-old son, you're like, okay with it to a degree. You're like, well, that's her son. He should come first. And you're
hmm
kind of okay. But men aren't, I think, as sensitive as women are, where we can be like, oh, they're always putting their kid before me. And I think that's kind of where,
yeah,
man versus woman plays into the dynamic of dating and how it's different for when men date and women date, and especially after, like you said, being divorced, and I've been divorced. For me, I'm like, yeah, no thanks.
yeah.
Right.
You know, it's different strokes for different folks. You know, and I think
Mm-hmm.
it's every relationship's a little bit different. And as I said, you just have to understand what you're getting into and be careful. Because you know, and especially when you're leaving a relationship that has a small child or a toddler, because they grow on you and you grow
Mm-hmm.
on them, and you're going to impress upon them. And so that's something that it's not just one person that's going to be involved in that relationship. It's going to be the kids, you know, obviously pets. But you know, you have to be aware of that. And it's not just about, you want to be the number one, but there's other factors at stake as
Yeah,
well.
I think you just hit the nail on that one. I think that was the most important thing that you just said. It's not about you or that person. Now you have a third person or a fourth person, depending how many children there are,
Yeah,
and that is huge, right? So,
yeah,
hey, maybe part of it too is maybe not me just being number one. It could be, oh man, wow, that's you're trying to get involved in something. It's like, no, I'm not getting involved with one person. I'm getting involved with three people,
yeah. You are getting
right?
involved with the family, and that was the one regret I had is I know that he had a father that was kind of absent, and he wanted the father's attention, and so
Mm-hmm.
now you've created a dynamic that, he's not gonna be able to trust anybody, so you know
Mm.
but anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow,
and
that's a lot.
we're the type of people who we, treat our dogs like kids, and
Mm-hmm.
we could never foster dogs.
Mm-mm.
You know, It's just like to give them back after you're attached, like, oh my gosh. Or you ended up just keeping them. But honestly, Demetra, we actually talked about adopting a kid. Because when we met, we were, if anyone's listening who doesn't know us, I was about 40 and he's a few years older than me. So anyway, long story short, we thought about adopting, and we thought we could even like adopt like not an infant. And in the state of Illinois, it's a little bit messy, I would say. You have to be really, really open to it could be temporary.
Really?
Yes. And we're like, there is no way. That would be so emotionally traumatizing to me to like
And to the kids. Why would they do that to the kids? You know?
bottom line, just real quick, the advice I got from calling all these different agencies and trying to like learn how it all works is that in Illinois, they actually suggest you go to the states around Illinois, because there's other states where they give a birth parent like a number of chances, and if they don't comply to XYZ, they're considered unfit and their kid is up for adoption. Whereas in Illinois, like they give them, almost infinite options or chances, so to speak, which I don't know, that's a whole other topic, but it's hard if somebody wants to adopt, like for you to sign on the dotted line that like you're totally willing to give them back to their parent if they get clean or do this or do that. It's
I
like,
wouldn't be able to do that. Absolutely
No,
not.
that's a non-starter for me.
I
and
mean,
I feel
I
like
actually
it's bad
fostered
for
a
the
dog
kids.
once. Yeah. And I cried
Oh
for
yeah.
weeks, after having this dog for only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, also we wanted to talk about online dating. That's such a big thing now, and I feel like it's really hard to meet people organically. But the online dating thing is so weird, and but that's how we met too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it does work. I mean, you guys, I
Yeah.
mean, I know a lot of people that met their significant other, but most of the time I feel like it's not as, real as what you guys have.
Yeah. It's an option, but I don't know that you want to have it as the only option. It's like anything else. It's just another way to kind of get out there and see what's available. I don't know that I'd use it as the only option. But
Is there
there's
something specific you guys feel that made your experience more that it worked? Is there anything that you feel that you guys did maybe differently? Was it meeting very soon on? Was it maybe talking for much longer period of a time? What would you think, or base it on, other people online that you were trying to get together with? What was different about your connection?
I would say we met quickly, so within 2 weeks, I would say. And
Okay.
I think it was so much more different than other people I had dated online. Just like the in-person part was just very, very comfortable and easy. Whereas I felt like I was at a job interview with a lot of other people. Well, or I was interviewing them, one of the two.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot more natural. So
Yeah.
meeting pretty early on, right? So that helped. And then once you met, it was just a very natural connection. And then what about for you, Scott? Do you feel the same or?
Yeah, it was the same for me as well. I prefer to meet sooner than later because what ends up happening is that it kind of drags out, and if they're not going to meet and it's not something that they're going to be doing anytime soon, then it's just I move on. And when I met Barbara, it was just it's hard to explain. It was just so easy. She was so real, that it just clicked. And I remember her saying that before we met, she said, I hope that we're attracted. The attraction is still there when we meet, because that would really be bad, and that's true.
Yeah.
That's an important part. You can be the best match in the world, but if there's not attraction, it may not be the best romantic relationship. You can still be friends, as they say. Snore,
Yeah.
Well, the whole saying of like opposites attract, at least for me, I want to be comfortable. And he and I are very, very, very similar. And to me, that is so nice. And I have dated people really opposite me, and it can be exciting, but it's almost like a, inevitable letdown. One thing about me is I am a definite homebody. I'm like introverted in my personal life. And when I dated people who are super outgoing, I did sort of enjoy that here and there. But then what bothered me is that when I just wasn't up for dealing with that or going out, then I would feel like I was letting them down. And Scott and I are equally happy to be at home or, like the same amount of socializing is what we like.
Well, that's like the biggest thing for me right now because I'm definitely not the same person I was 10 years ago. And I love to stay home. I love it. I could do this all the time. Once in a blue moon, I like to go out. But when I mean go out, it's like, oh, the weather's nice. Let's go for a walk. Let's take a ride by the lake. Let's go for a quick bike ride. But the majority of the time, I want to be home, cooking at home, gardening at home. And I'm just very nervous with trying to, put myself out there and meet someone because I feel everybody now is like, just wants to go out and do things all the time. And then I feel like I'm a downer. I'm going to be a downer. So I'm already like putting the brakes on things and I'm just like, no one's going to get me. No one's going to understand me. And every time I meet people, I'm like, I'm kind of boring, like right off the bat. And I feel like I'm self-sabotaging, right? It's not boring to me. I enjoy it, but it might be boring for them.
I think it's a lot like the FOMO thing, fear of missing out, where online people feel the need to be acting like their life is a certain way or even me, I have pictures of like all the places I've traveled, but I don't take pictures of myself on the couch, which is what I like a lot. But and I know, Demetra, you're like us where we really like to make our homes super awesome and comfortable. When I used to travel, I used to think to myself, oh, this is such an awesome hotel or this or that. And then I would think, why am I doing an awesome hotel for 2 weeks? And then the rest of the year, I'm in a place I'm like, it's all right. It's not that great. So for example, we want like a TV and surround system and whatever to where it's more fun to watch a movie at home than to go out. So that's just how I am. And so
see, I love that. I think that's great. That's how I am. Same thing. It's like I wanted to create a space that I didn't need to vacation from per se.
Yes. Exactly.
But I think it's hard to find people that are on that same page, Barbara. Because a lot of the FOMO too, and people aren't. I think they're scared when they're trying to date to actually mention to someone, "Hey, I really enjoy staying home." So sometimes people aren't putting their authentic self out there.
Well, I think that what I'm saying is, I think probably guys feel the pressure to act like they want to go out, even though they maybe don't. So if you're just like, "This is how I am," and I think it's pretty awesome, it gives them an opportunity. Like, are they actually really like that as well?
Right.
I do think, and to your point, Demetra, I felt the exact same way. I was not as gregarious. I am. I mean, I'm very gregarious with people. I love people. I'm like to be personable. But I have a lot of friends from college that they wanted to go out drinking every night, and that they like to bar hop, which I can't stand. I want to go to the dentist, and they always gave me crap for it. Oh, you're never going to meet anybody. You're never going to do this. You got to get out there. You got da. And you know what? As you said, you just got to put it out there. This is me. This is who I am. And if that's not you, then we're not a good fit. It's just like if you're in your salon, there's going to be people that you meet that just don't jive with you, and you have to let them go.
Right, and it's not that you're not doing good work on them or vice versa. Yeah. It's just sometimes it just doesn't. I've had plenty of people come in and coming from other people getting haircuts and they're like, oh, this wasn't good. And it's like, oh my God, this is a great haircut. But what I think what was happening was they weren't vibing, right? They felt the hairstylist was too mean or pushy, but then they did have a great haircut, but they didn't know how to articulate their wording on it, right? So they just said, oh, I didn't get a good haircut. And I think it goes the same in our personal life, right?
It does. It's the same thing. It's everybody's going to be a little bit different. You're going to jive with certain people and other people you're not. And it's, when you don't have someone significant, it's a little bit harder to have that mindset. But once you do, it's like, hey, I'm important. What I feel matters. What I want to do is matters. I don't have to be like anybody else for me to be happy. And that's easier said than done once you kind of have somebody. But I think having that mindset going in, saying, what I like to do is important to me, and that should be enough. And it will matter when the right person comes along.
Well, and
Yeah.
Demetra, I felt the same way, and people would say to me all the time, like, "Oh, well, you have to go out and go do what you like to do," and I'm like, "I like to be at home." And then it seems too contrived that way too. Like, "Oh, I'm gonna go take a pottery class and meet someone who's likes the movie Ghost and like, have a moment."
Yeah.
But this is the thing is I was looking for another introvert that didn't want to leave the house to meet somebody.
That's what she had.
It was online.
That was the first line in her profile. I'm not leaving the house. You have to be an introvert.
I didn't say that. No, I
Oh my God, I love it though if you did.
But
That's
there's
okay.
there's a lot of societal pressure to be outgoing and loud and want to party and want to adventure. There's a lot of societal pressure, especially in business. You have to be the extroverted. You have to be someone that wants to kind of lead the pack, if you will. And there's if you are introverted, Demetra, there is a wonderful book called Quiet. Susan Cain, I think is her name.
I write this down.
Yeah, it talks about the power of being an introvert. Long story short, and that you don't have to be an extrovert to function and be a contributing member of society, as they say. But yeah, there's a lot of societal pressure. You just got to be you.
There is. Oh my God, I think I thought I was this person or wanted to be this way because it was the pressures of society. But in reality, what gave me peace and happiness is what I do right now. You know?
Yeah, it's funny when they always say when you're not looking is when you'll meet somebody. And that doesn't mean that you can't have feelers out there, whether it be online dating or you might go and hang out with your friends every couple months. But if you're not focused on it and you're not, worried about it and you're just yourself and you do what you enjoy doing, it's going to happen organically. And that's the way it's supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the best way. It's hard too when you work in the industry that Barbara and I do. We have clients and some of us, some of my clients have known me for 20 years and they've seen the transition. So every time they see me like, hey, how's dating? Are you dating? Have you met anybody? And so, like the last, I don't know how long, the last 2 years, I'm just like, no, I'm not dating. I haven't dated. I'm not trying to date. And it's kind of like this sadness on their face. But I'm like, no, I'm so happy. This is like the happiest I've ever been. I do have to say it's like either it's going to happen organically or if you're someone that really is that person's like, look, I really want to get married and have children by X, Y, and Z, then you got to really put in the work. And that is a different stage of life. I'm 46 years old. I'm very happy. I'm not looking to have children. So I think I'm in a different status of someone else that's trying to date that's maybe 10 years younger than me at 36. They're feeling pressure. Maybe I need to freeze my eggs.
Yeah, and I think that might take people aback, like your clients and people that, well, you should have somebody. You should have this. You should have a boyfriend.
Well, because I know they love me and they like me and they're like, but we want to see you with someone. And I'm like, well, me too. But it's also okay.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of it being kind of like more in midlife is there's no rush.
Yeah. Well, I do have a question for you, Scott. Did you know, after your divorce the first time, did you know you wanted to get married again or were you just open to it? It didn't matter. It wasn't like something you had to have or you knew for sure you wanted that?
It is something that I think I wanted. I maybe not obviously right away, but it ultimately, I did want that to happen. I was just extremely skeptical. Skeptical. Just for the first year, it was just, I was kind of having fun. Forgive me for saying, but it was.
No, that's good. You should. That's what you should do.
Exploration and just trying to. Well, I lost 60 pounds. I moved to a different city. You have to kind of. I'm not gonna say reinvent yourself, but you have to kind of start from scratch and just kind of work on yourself. And I did want to get married again, I think at some point.
Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, when I first got divorced, I actually really thought within 3 years I was going to be remarried, maybe even throwing a kid or two there, because I was young, 35 at that time. So it's just kind of interesting now to be like, holy shit, I'm 46. and I've only dated like 2 people in 11 years. And it was like, no one I would have married, and it's like, wow, holy shit, where did the time go? But I really thought immediately, like, I was like ready for it. I'm like, yeah, of course I want to get married again. It's not like I had a horrible experience just because I got divorced,
Yeah, and
Um,
it just depends. Some people are like, no way, and some people you meet, they've been on their third or fourth marriage.
yeah.
It's just more of a transactional thing for them. If God forbid, if Barbara and I ever got divorced, I don't think I'd ever want to be married again.
Oh,
If this doesn't work, I'm going to live on the moon. I don't know.
right.
Well, if this doesn't work, nothing will, right?
Yeah, it's sort
There
of
you
like,
go.
I don't know what else to do at that point. And there is a little bit of that going on when you do get divorced. There's sort of like, what did I do wrong? Where did it go wrong? Why didn't we work? In my situation, we were perfect on paper. It was like, ideally, this should work. Why wouldn't it? Life gets in the way, things happen, and it didn't wasn't a good fit. And sometimes you don't figure that out until later. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just the roll of the dice, unfortunately.
We were actually okay with like just being together and not getting married. It was more like we thought, well, if we want to have kids, we should get married,
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it became more of an issue of, I just wanted to put this out there. It's a different angle or aspect of things where, if you're not having kids, we were like, well, what? It's just a piece of paper anyway. We just like really wanted to be together and have the companionship and all that. And then it also comes into play, when you start getting serious about life, like medical and finances and everything. And you're like, well, it does make more sense to get married, if
Yeah.
you are going
It
to live
does.
together forever, like, why
Yeah.
not?
Of course, yeah. I think at that point you're like, yeah, why aren't we getting married?
Like Scott said earlier, it's transactional at some point, right?
Transactional?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It at some point it just kind of made sense. I'm like, yeah, why don't we get married? Why don't,
Mm-hmm.
why are we waiting?
And that's okay. That's okay too.
Yeah.
I mean, if the attraction is there and the chemistry is there and you're older and you're like, yeah, we might not be having kids, but we do plan on being together and let's get our lives going. Like, why not?
Mhm.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, and when it's midlife, also, I didn't change my last name, mostly because, well, I can't tell you how many people I've dated who their mom is named Barbara, including Scott.
Yeah. that
Oh,
was-
wow.
So
Okay.
if I were to change my name, it would be the exact name of his mother, which is a little weird. But
that's a little odd.
Yeah, that's a little weird,
I
but
mean, if push came to shove, I guess we could, but it's
well, and
So wait,
and also,
there's no nicknames for Barbara, Scott? You got a little nickname for her? I'm sure you do.
I mean, like honey. But yeah, well, interestingly, my mom's kind of nickname was Barbie.
Cute.
Didn't go by Barb or anything like that. And Barbara, my Barbara, only goes by Barbara. And my
Well,
mom's.
I call her Babs sometimes. I say, "Hey, Babs, what's up,
Mhm.
Babs?"
Yeah, that doesn't fly around here. I get smacked. No,
no, I don't.
Oh,
no. I call her, if I call her by her first name, she thinks that she's in trouble.
I know. I'm like, what I do.
I'm like, Barbara. But yeah, that would be interesting.
Well, going back to the list, I just wanted to bring up that I was raised Mormon, and for a long time, it was like crazy important to me to marry a Mormon person. And I don't consider myself Mormon anymore. So that has gone out the window. But that's partly why I stayed single for so long. And I wouldn't have married Scott when I was in my 20s because I was like so sure I had to marry a Mormon person. And that was really toxic looking back because it was like number one of the non-negotiables. And I dated so many people that were like dishonest or not kind because they were Mormon, and that was like first and foremost.
Interesting.
I just want to point that out. Like when you're young,
Wow.
sometimes you don't realize what you're doing to yourself when you
right. You were
prioritize
literally,
things.
yeah. I think having a list is really good. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Scott, do you have any funny stories when you were dating or before you met Barbara? Anything that kind of was like a red flag, but that was kind of like a funny red flag or anything like that? Or
Yeah, so I dated a girl very, very briefly who had, I think I had a dog similar to yours, Demetra. Is your dog is a Shih Tzu, is that right?
she's a Yorkie,
A
Yorkshire
York,
Terrier.
Yorkshire.
Yeah.
Okay. I think this dog was looked similar. She might have been a Shih Tzu or a Yorkie. Anyway, so I dated this girl. I think we went on one date. Um, and I remember I met her online, and she talked about her dog constantly. And I love dogs, but she always talked about him. And he used his first name, and he's doing that, and he's doing this, and I was like, all right, uh, she likes her dog. Oh well, that's interesting. That's cool.
We all like dogs.
Yeah, I'm like, I love
Yeah.
dogs. I'm like, that's great. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad your dog is. Uh, thanks for updating me on what he did today.
Oh,
And so we like, hey, we're like, let's meet up. And she was a little wackadoo, a little out there, just in general. It's hard to really describe it, but she was a little weird. But anyway, so we decided to meet at TGI Fridays. This is gonna be our first date. And I showed up, and she rolls in 20 minutes late. That's the first red
oh,
flag. I'm like, hey, I'm like, all right, well, all right, we'll give her the benefit of the doubt, whatever. But so she comes up and she gets out of her car, and she's got this little carrier with her, and I thought it was like a suitcase, and I was like, oh, maybe she's going somewhere. And then she walks up, she's like, hi, sorry I'm late, and in the carrier, believe it or not, was her dog,
No.
and he was a small little thing, and I was like, what are you doing with that? And she's like, oh, well, he's gonna eat with us, and I said, oh, good lord. So she
Oh.
actually brings him into the restaurant, puts him on the seat next to her. We sat in a booth, and we kind of ordered something, and she just kind of feeds him through the grate in the carrier. And I was like, am I being punked?
Right.
And
I think this is more than a red flag.
it was a little goofy. The whole conversation was about her. She never, she wasn't. It wasn't a conversation. It was kind of like this monologue she had, talking about her dog, talking about this, talking about that. And I was like, uh-huh. All right, well, it's been nice meeting you. I'm gonna go hang myself. But yeah,
Wow.
that was yeah.
So that was bad. Yeah. She didn't. So notes, if someone is not asking you questions in return, then that's probably also a red flag, right? That's what we're going to
Yeah.
take from
Yes.
this, right?
You gotta be able to have a conversation. You gotta be able to talk, and just watch their face, look at their expressions, see how they answer questions. What's their posture? Are they leaning forward? Are they leaning back? Are they crossing their elbows? Are they, or their arms, not their elbows? Just little social cues like that. Anything else? And it's
Sure.
little subliminal stuff we pick up that tells us if they're interested, if they're engaged.
Mm-hmm.
the other day, somebody told me that she and her girlfriends talk all the time about pink flags, and a pink flag
Oh.
is a cue about a guy you're dating to know that he might be gay.
I never heard of a pink flag. I'm writing this one down. A
I'm gonna write that
pink?
one down.
Yeah, he's writing it down.
Yeah.
So I think these days it's so much more acceptable that, like,
Right.
people who are in their 50s and 60s for sure will be divorced women who were married to gay men because
Yeah.
it was
I
not
know a
okay.
few of them actually.
Mhm.
So those divorcees are cool ladies who are also like, wow, I just really don't want to end up with another guy who may be gay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they call pink flags, such
Interesting.
as they know more about Broadway than you do.
Wow.
Things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, the older I get, might not be so bad to like have a gay companion. Like we would both love to shop and cook and garden and I mean, think about it, right? And like
You'd both like the same cool guy?
yes. Yeah, I mean, it's not so bad actually. I don't know. Might be onto something with them pink flags.
That's interesting. Well, I don't know why we're all jumping all over Broadway. That's awesome.
Oh, I know. We
Gardening's
love
my
Broadway.
pastime. I don't know why it's got to be about being baby.
I love it.
What were you saying?
Oh,
That's neat.
I've gotten much pickier after being single for so long and being older. Now, as I get older, I'm like, yes, I want good-looking men. I've dated
Yeah.
plenty of guys that were overweight,
Mhm.
that just I liked them for them. But now I'm at the point where I'm like, yeah, no, I need more.
Yeah.
I want more.
Well, and when you like your life just fine, it's like you want someone who's going to add to it, not bring in problems.
Right.
Yeah, and there's nothing. And as we sort of said earlier, that's okay. It's okay to have specifics and preferences.
Yeah.
You
It
have to
seems like
be.
picky, but I don't think I'm being picky per se. These are just preferences, what I would like, you know.
Yeah, what you
It's
would
a wish
prefer.
list, right?
It's not like, oh, I'm Bob. Oh, how tall are you? Oh, I'm 5'11". Oh, sorry, I can't date you.
Right.
It's not like that. But ideally, it's like this is a gravy, if you will. Someone that's got a nice body and this, that, and the other. It's gravy. But in the end, when you're sitting home for 2 years with COVID, how much is that going to really matter? And that's
Yeah.
just stuff like that, in the real long term of working and living with someone in day-to-day life. And that's hard to sort of sometimes put your head around, but what's really going to matter in the long run,
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, something else I read recently that makes a lot of sense is that women tend to be a little bit pickier with their partners because of the evolutionary aspect. How like women can have one child per year. So it's very like down to biology. And whereas men can have several like children within a year. Or you know what I'm saying?
Plant
Like-
their seed.
Yeah, no, that's biologically, evolutionarily speaking, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Men, genetically, biologically, want to go out there and sort of, as you said, spread their seed. As perverse as that sounds,
Go to Hooters.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And guys are attracted to, generally speaking, voluptuous builds because it means that they can generally bear children better. There's a book I read, I forget the name of it, but talks all about evolution and how guys are more drawn to certain women with, larger backsides or whatnot, just because it usually means they can bear children. That's not really a case anymore nowadays, but
Right.
Oh,
But
it's funny how you said that. But
but yeah, it's just, and that doesn't excuse, one's behavior if they, kind of leave and don't leave a forwarding address or whatever the saying is these days. But if they get out there more than they should, yeah, but biologically, guys are always going to be kind of have that need to kind of see what else is out there.
yeah. So you need someone evolved. Also, I was talking to Demetra about this a couple weeks ago, the Madonna horror complex. I felt like that played a part in a lot of times, like the people I was dating, because I grew up in a religious environment, whereas Scott's family was quite just science minded. I mean, I guess atheist, maybe. Would you say
Agnostic?
agnostic?
My dad was atheist. But
But there was no like they didn't go to church, stuff like that. Whereas with me, it was so like super important in my family's life, and so you end up with a lot of people, a lot of men who have a hard time separating. Like, there's women who are sexy, and there's women who are wives and mothers, and they can never be the same.
But I think that still goes for today as well. I mean, a lot of men, the same guys that will hit on a woman and DM the sexy models on Instagram or see them, in a parking lot, they initially just see this beautiful woman as, hey, I need to tap that, opposed to her being a long term. And I think that is really messed up for a lot of women out there too, because some women are great women and they're just getting a bad rap because of the way evolution for men, how they think and perceive women.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy because it really does lie behind the science and evolution of it, but it is messing up a lot of people too.
It
You
is.
know?
Yeah.
I think the social media and marketing and the Hollywood industry has ruined people's perception of themselves. Absolutely ruined it. In terms of
Yes.
what's beautiful and what's attractive, and it's sad because they promote that you have to be this and you have to be that and you have to this. I think it's really ruined what's important in terms of characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and you have to be as a man, I think you have to be a little bit above it to really understand life and how relationships work. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say something that it took me a long time to understand is that it's really a negative for those guys. Like guys who can't have like a relationship because their eye keeps wandering, they can't focus on one. It's actually not great for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're really
Yeah.
missing out.
Yeah, they are.
So it really is their
Absolutely.
loss that they're being so surface and kind of viewing women as objects. Or if you do get married, you have to have your side piece because that your wife is no longer sexy because she's your wife.
Right. Or she
Yeah.
had your children, so now you view her differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of goes back to what I was saying about evolution, biological impact. But again, as I said, it doesn't change choices that you have. You can still be committed and still be kind of a good husband or wife, and not be driven by your appetites. I don't even. And that's not to say that I am slamming on my brakes because I have to jump out of the car and chase women. I don't. I don't have those urges. It's just because I want to be with Barbara so much, and I just doesn't occur to me.
Well, I think that's why it's important also that attraction is important when you're in a relationship. So when people sit here and say, well, I mean, you'll learn to love them. I hate when people say that. No, I don't want to learn to love anybody just because they seem good on paper or they're a kind person. I want to be attracted to my person and vice versa.
I happen to be attracted to long-haired brunettes.
Yeah.
That's Barbara.
Thank
Yeah.
goodness.
And it's just I don't know what. Maybe it's because my mom was a brunette. She was half Persian. So, but yeah, I mean, you're gonna be attracted to maybe you might marry your dad. I married someone that's a kind of a weird mix between both my parents, which is very, very
I think I have a lot of the personality of his dad.
Yeah, very
Oh,
much so.
really?
Yeah, yeah, and she's also has a lot of my mom, but I think almost more my dad. Just the practicality, the practical nature, the critical thinking skills, but also the emotion of my mom.
Yeah.
The smarts of my mom, which is a very, very interesting, yin and yang, if you will. But yeah, as I said, there's nothing good or bad about it. When I was younger, I was like, nope, they have to be thin, they have to do this, they have to be that, they have to be, large-breasted, and that was my thing, and it's just you're not going to get what you want. You might get what you need, as they say. I don't know, but you got to keep on. That doesn't mean you can't be picky.
Right. I agree. So everyone out there, if you're listening, when people say, oh, you're being too picky, fuck those people. Don't listen to them. Be picky. Be picky. It's okay. I'm giving you permission.
Well, and on a lighter note, I actually read this week. I don't know if it's true because I read it on the internet. Sometimes you don't know. I was looking at where the term hooker comes from.
I just like Barbara always has she's just filled with the best information, right? Like always.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Fill us in. Hooker. Come on.
So allegedly there was this dude. Okay, horror is it's in the Bible. It's like really old. But hooker,
Right.
there was a guy, I want to say mid 1800s, and his last name was Hooker. And he was a little free and loose with the ladies. And so
Okay.
the ladies around town, he screwed them all. And So he had quite a reputation. And when people saw these girls about town, they were like, "Oh, those are hookers girls. They're hookers.
Seriously.
Like they belong to hooker."
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
So I don't know if he started a business that way or if they were all just for him. But that's where it comes from. Which,
That's so cool.
Wow.
okay, I
That's
said one more thing, but there's one more thing after that.
that's
Yeah.
branding for you. Go ahead.
I went to buy furniture, and for my first townhome that I bought, I wanted to have like a custom couch and all this stuff. I was like really excited about that. And one of my good friends, her sister-in-law was working at a furniture store.
Sorry.
And so I was like, "Oh yeah, let me hook up with her." This girl was so nice and so sweet, like way nicer and way sweeter than me. And she was like a very devout, oh gosh, Greek Orthodox. Anyway, she was a very
I'm
religious
Greek
person.
Orthodox.
Are you?
Even though I don't really practice any religion. Yeah.
Long story short, she told me I was having a hard time picking out certain things, certain pieces, and I'd been there a while. I was like, "Oh, I need to go home and like sleep on it and think about it." And she's like, "Okay, so we'll look both of these up online, these two items we were looking at." And one of them was this company called Hooker Furniture. And I love their stuff. But I was giggling.
Of
I was
course
like,
you do.
they have the most beautiful furniture. I love it.
Oh, that's hysterical.
And it's
Really?
like
I
very,
never heard of it. Hooker
very
furniture?
august. Yeah. Just like you would think it's spelled. Anyway, and she said, so it's like the name of the desk that I was looking at is called blah, blah, blah. And she said, so you just go to hookerfurniture.com. And she said, and don't make the mistake of going to hooker.com because I did that once. And she was serious.
You think?
That's so funny because I was actually going to look it up. I'm like, oh, I'm going to see what kind of furniture they have. And they'd be like, she was pulling my chain, this one. Hooker.com.
She was very serious. She was like, her eyes got big. She saw some shit when she looked up hooker.com. Anyway,
That's hilarious.
let's not do that.
Wow. Okay.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Well, you're just
Yes.
full of all sorts of great information, aren't you?
I am. All right. Well, let's wrap this one up.
Yes.
Thank you very much, babe, for coming on and giving us the guy's perspective on the dating.
Oh, it was my
Yes.
pleasure. Thank you very much for the time, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Hey, with me.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
All
Okay,
right. Thank
bye.
you. Bye. Thank you.